Hi everyone, hope you're doing well, hope you're keeping safe, and I hope you're keeping sane during this lockdown time. Thank you to everyone who messaged me about this particular topic, everyone who commented, everyone who sent me links to various news articles detailing the latest recommendations by the UK Gambling Commission, or the latest considerations by the UK Gambling Commission in the protection of vulnerable players and potential problem gamblers when it comes to gambling online. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, the UK Gambling Commission are currently considering, it hasn't been passed yet, but they are considering a new rule by which UK players, when gambling online, are given a predetermined loss limit. The amount that's been sort of suggested quite widely in the news or in the reports of this has been £100 a month per player, which would mean that after you've lost £100, so £100 net deposits have been lost for that month, you are unable to deposit, you are unable to play anymore until that time has elapsed. Now, having done a bit of reading on this, it turns out that sort of £100 a month figure is kind of the lowest possible limit that is being proposed. It could be significantly higher, but in the new articles I've read, they have quoted sort of the current limits, which people are able to set themselves, as being unreasonably high. For example, in some cases they can be sort of tens and hundreds of thousands of pounds a month, and actually you can set that as a loss limit, and they're saying this is unreasonably high or unrealistically high for the majority of players, and they want to implement effectively a blanket limit for UK players. So help protect people, help stop them losing more money than they can afford, and hopefully help prevent financial issues, financial problems, and financial hardship off the back of online gambling. So what I wanted to do in this video is just sort of share my thoughts on that, give you my opinions on that, and explain why I think it will or won't work. Now, my initial reaction to this was, firstly, it's great that the UKGC are looking at ways in which they can protect vulnerable players, looking at ways in which they can help, limit the possibility of causing real financial damage and financial hardship to people who are most at risk. My second thought was, what a load of rubbish. What a load of nonsense an arbitrary £100 a month loss limit would be. I spoke a while ago about my thoughts on how gambling regulation, particularly around online casinos here in the UK, could be improved to help protect players who are at risk of gambling addiction, or players who may not currently be at risk of gambling addiction but may at some time in the future sort of start going down that road. And I proposed an affordability form of check for players, a central agency, a government agency or whatever, that assesses people's finances, income and expenditure, and allows that information to be passed on via maybe an API or something to UK registered online casinos, and it allows them to monitor a player's usage. And if a player is spending well beyond their means, they are able to then either contact them or able to restrict their account in some way. It could also be a way of setting up an automated loss limit, so people are only able to lose an amount that is potentially within their affordability range. However, I do have a fundamental problem with this one-size-fits-all solution that the UKGC seems to be considering at the moment. Now, I think even if we take the idea of £100 a month out of the equation, now having been an online gambler, £100 a month to me seems quite low, but for others it may seem quite high, and I think that's where the crux of the matter is. What level is affordable will be different for every single person. If you are someone who is living literally just about within your means, as a huge amount of people in the UK are, and unfortunately, due to the current situation, probably an increasing number of people are literally living sort of just about within their means, maybe beyond their means, and maybe a little bit sort of hand to mouth or living paycheck to paycheck, then £100 a month could be enough. If you lost that £100 a month, that could be enough to mean that you can't afford to pay your rent, you can't afford to pay your mortgage, you can't afford to keep a roof over your head or keep yourself fed. So in that instance, £100 a month is far too high a limit for these particular players. On the other end of the spectrum, of course, there will be people who are playing substantially higher stakes. There'll be people who can afford to lose thousands of pounds a month on a recreational basis, and it won't affect them in any way, shape or form. If you can imagine a high roller who gambles recreationally, who would quite happily spend sort of £10,000, £20,000 or whatever in a casino or a gambling session, and they've actually earmarked that money for a gamble, then they will no longer bother. The industry will obviously lose out. Whether or not you're concerned about that is neither here nor there. But it means that these people who wish to gamble at a higher level are unable to do so, but the people who gamble at the lower level, who maybe can't afford it, are still able to lose an amount of money that is unaffordable to them. And this is why I believe that a one-size-fits-all system cannot work, and that if we are to implement an affordability type of protection, and I don't think that's a bad idea, although I'm not sure about the logistics and the fundamentals of implementing such a system. If we are to implement any kind of sort of affordability cutoff or deposit net loss limit, etc., it has to be down to the individual's situation and a very honest look at income and expenditure. And it should be monitored and regulated by an independent body, which is then fed to the online casinos and monitored to ensure player protection. As another example, imagine that, like when I was younger, when I was a young adult, I got myself into a substantial amount of debt, partially through gambling, but also through unnecessary expenditure. But that was through using credit cards. For whatever reason, when I was young, I had a good credit rating and I could borrow a lot of money on credit cards. And I ended up getting myself into around £20,000 worth of debt on credit cards. And at the time, I was earning £20,000 a year, and realistically, I couldn't afford to service that debt, let alone actually pay it back in any sort of reasonable timescale. So I was stuck with this credit card debt which I couldn't have afforded. And realistically, back then, there wasn't the affordability checks that the FSA now impose. So I was able to borrow this money with no real ability to pay it back. Now, effectively, what this new UKGC legislation is doing is stepping in and saying, well, okay, he couldn't afford £20,000 worth of debt, so everyone should have a credit card limit of £10,000, no more, no less. A maximum credit limit for any individual of £10,000, and that way, minimum payments and monthly repayments are all going to be at an affordable level. And we can see straight away that that's absolute nonsense. That's not going to work. There are people who can borrow £100 off a payday lender and won't be able to pay that back. They will default on it, and that then becomes obviously an issue, as we've discussed in other videos. There will be people who, if they were limited to a £10,000 credit limit on credit cards, would find another way to fund their borrowing because it would be insufficient for their requirements. Particularly if you look at people who run businesses, people who may send a lot of money abroad, and people who make extravagantly large purchases. If you're a millionaire, then you may well use a credit card as a very secure way of paying for whatever you're purchasing. So if you want to go out and you want to treat yourself to a new car or some luxury holiday or something that's going to break through this arbitrary limit that has been imposed to protect people, then you're not going to be able to do that. And so you won't use that service in the same way that people who like to bet a little bigger, a little larger, won't continue to gamble, won't continue to gamble recreationally and well within their means if they're restricted to, say, a £100 loss. Because they won't see the point, they won't get the enjoyment from it, they won't get the pleasure from it. And we could say maybe that's a good step because that's one step closer to having no gambling at all. But as I discussed in my last video, I thoroughly shy away from the idea of blanket banning anything that is potentially harmful to the individual because, well, as we can see at the moment, nobody really wants to live in a police state where anything you enjoy, anything that you spend your leisure time doing that is now considered potentially harmful, we don't want to be in a situation where all those things are banned, illegal, and we're not able to do them. And hopefully we can do most of these things again in the future. So I don't know what your thoughts are. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. As always, I do read them all. Like I said, I don't get a chance to necessarily reply to them all, but I do read them all. And whilst I think the idea of an affordability test is great, I think maybe the UKGC, maybe their heads are in the right place with this, but I think the implementation of a blanket limit, if indeed that's what it turns out to be, the details are still a little bit vague, the implementation of a blanket limit on customer spending is maybe well-intentioned, but very ill thought out in my opinion. Like I say, let me know your thoughts. Thank you to everyone for watching. Thanks to everyone who has subscribed to the channel over the last sort of week or so. And yeah, like I say, I'm in lockdown, so expect another video very soon. Have a good day, guys. Cheers. Bye-bye.